Our other conversation. In the recent past, the vibrant Ugandan press and media have been awash with reports about the diverse difficulties political parties, both the incumbent and the opposition, have been facing in respect of financing. And the recent news, we had fights over party financing, with parties disagreeing over how to share the money. To speak to us about this, we have Henry Muguzi, the Executive Director of Alliance for Campaign Finance Monitoring, and Alex Atuhaire from Editors Guild, who also manages PML Daily. I did have him during our press review, and he has also covered elections in the field as an editor. Gentlemen, a very good morning.
Very good morning to you, Rami.
First of all, Henry, what does the law say about sharing the money?
Thank you very much, and quite interesting. In 2010, the Political Parties and Organizations Act was amended. The purpose it was amended was to enable government to finance political parties, because it became clear that political parties needed resources to function effectively. So that law provides that, for number one, government shall finance political parties. Number two, there will be two instances in which government shall finance political parties. The first one would be in respect of day-to-day running. So in respect for day-to-day running, government shall finance political parties, which shall be, that money should be shared on the basis of numerical strength in parliament. But it also says there is another instance. Political parties shall be financed in respect of elections. And it says, the law, that in respect of elections, that money shall be shared on equal basis. And it says that money for the purpose of elections shall be shared by not only political parties, but also political organizations, because remember that law is regulating both political parties and political organizations. That's what.
When they talk about political organizations, are they talking about SEDU? Such organizations?
SEDU is a civil society organization.
So what kind of political organizations are they talking about?
There are organizations that engage in politics without necessarily contesting in elections. But they engage in politics, but they are not that governmental, but they are registered with the Electoral Commission. Now,
do you have examples?
Not one that I can mention, but the law provides for those, just in case they emerge. But now we have most of the political parties.
But then you have the NRM that is saying this money should be aggregated according to numerical strength.
No. The law is clear. The law says political parties shall get political money funding from government. Number two, that money shall be appropriated in two instances. The first one, in respect of day-to-day running. So what is happening now, and what we have an issue with, is that the Ministry of Finance has decided to always concentrate on Section 14C and ignore consistently Section 14B. Section 14B, which comes with that amendment, provides that in respect of elections, are we not in elections?
Yes, sir.
So in respect of elections, government shall finance political parties and organizations. If you want to know which are those political parties that should benefit from this, then you go to the list of Electoral Commission where they are registered. They have 35 of them. So they should get this money, which is shared on equal basis. But they ignored it in 2011, ignored it in 2016. Chances are it is being ignored even now. So the Ministry of Finance has, for reasons we cannot understand, with the yardstick we don't understand, decided consistently to look at the other. But there is more. Because you see, you ask yourself a question then, why are we here? Why is it so difficult that, why is this Minister of Finance and the Electoral Commission running away from the responsibility of financing political parties in respect of elections? Who stands to benefit when parties are financed in respect of elections? Who stands to lose? I think that's where the explanation.
All right, Alex Atuhaire is also here, the editorial editor at PML. Mr. Alex, what do you make of all this?
Well, I think this has been a chronic problem. Funding
a chronic problem?
Yeah, funding of political parties and campaigns. And it's a very serious issue.
Is it intentional?
Of course, I think it is in some way very intentional, because you can imagine Henry did, and his organization did some research in 2016 after the elections, and it was estimated that the NRM, the party in power, the ruling party, and the campaign of President Yoweri Museveni spent about 773 billion shillings.
No, it was upwards of $1 trillion.
Then
this is 29.
That was the estimate. Then Amama Mbabazi, who ran on the Go Forward ticket, and his Go Forward was estimated to have spent about 66 billion. Now, Kizza Besigye, who came second in the election and who made it very competitive, was estimated to have spent about 15 billion shillings. Now, you can imagine that if the 773, which is suspected to be 90% public resources,
Of course.
if 15% or 20% of that was allocated to the campaign of Kizza Besigye and the FDC, you can see what the ground, how the ground would shift.
Yes.
So I think in some way it's absolutely deliberate, and we need to put in place mechanisms to ensure that when we come to financing political parties and campaigns, and we are absolutely very clear to ensure, first of all, equity, and to make sure that it does not, lack of money on some of the players does not tilt the playing field. Luckily enough, he has explained very well, the law is very clear, that when it comes to financing of political parties, first of all on day-to-day operations, and secondly, during elections, the funding should be on equal pro rata basis. So this argument that there's 15 billion shillings, is it 15 or 16?
15 billion,
Which is a drop in the ocean. Of course, I don't agree that
Sure.
we should be financing our political parties. Of all the budget, of all the things we have financed, then we should look for just a mere 15 billion shillings and then throw it to the parties. And then even when you throw it to the parties, then you decide that NRM, which has 84% representation, there's some logic in the argument, but it does not make any sense in terms of the bigger picture, in terms of our democratic spaces. So I think we should finance the political parties and their campaigns better than we are doing, and we should do so. When we have the money, it should be done on an equal basis. That's when we shall ensure that the playing field is level.
All right, Alex, thank you. Henry, we are getting some information from political experts who are saying we shouldn't be using taxpayers' money to fund political parties. What do you make of this?
Right. You see, money in politics is such a devil that many countries that have progressed in democracy have gone through where we are. What is happening to Uganda is not unique to Uganda. Countries have gone through it. And they have approached and employed different mechanisms. Norway, one of the countries we can look at, for their democracy to be shielded from the vagaries of commercialized politics, they had to ensure that political parties and all political participants get to be funded by government. When you get them to be funded by government, you ensure one thing. Number one, there is a level playing field. Number two, you will avoid and shield your candidates from being financed by selfish interests, which could be business interests, but also terrorist interests. You know, there are so many interests. There are so many stakeholders that want to use elections as a window of opportunity to capture and undermine the sovereignty of a state. And therefore, that works. But also, the other thing is that you see, if we have sat in Parliament in 2010 and decided that there is a problem here, the problem is that political parties are failing to raise money. We have a number of political parties who cannot even have a shout in these elections, okay? And political parties don't just get to become political parties not to participate, because just like you cannot have a football team that does not participate in a league. Political parties that we have, and they're 35 in number, would have wanted to participate in this election. But because of the lack of money, they can't. Now, so it's important in a situation where political parties are not able to raise money to be able to compete, then the government has to come in and finance, and this is what they wanted to cure. So the reason we also have to finance them as taxpayers is because political parties exist to project the voices and interests of the citizens. Because you see, all of us cannot go and have a shout at the governance table. Political parties do. So they come and speak to us, mobilize us as citizens. They project our needs. That's what they do. And therefore, because they serve us as citizens, it's important that we facilitate them through our taxes.
All right, let me also engage Alex. Alex, we are also getting information that this money has actually promoted something that is callous within this country. So many people are rushing to start opening up or registering political parties simply because they want to get a share of this money from the government. Is this true? It's a business now.
Well,
I register a political party, get representation within parliament, and I just await this money from government.
Of course,
Not actually to air out the views of the people.
of course, it is true in some instances, because as he says, there are 35
Yes.
political
So
parties
many.
registered with the Electoral Commission.
But the formidable
And
ones
some
are like
of
five.
them, about 20-30% of those are the ones running in the real sense of a political party. But that does not take away the argument that we should be able to fund our political parties better, because we cannot say that because people will run to register political parties, we need to tighten the laws such that when you access that money, then you are compelled to account for it. You are compelled to use it for the purposes that is supposed to be used for, but not to say now that if we fund these people, if we fund political parties, then very many people will look at that as a source of income and register political parties. I don't think that negates the argument that we should be able to fund our political parties better, because as he enumerated, there are several benefits that comes from funding all the political parties, whether the political party is in government or whether the political party is in opposition. We need to deal with parties that are able to offer critical, viable alternatives, whether they are in opposition. So that's the basis of the argument that political parties should be funded from public coffers.
I hope to rejoin that, because Alex does make a very interesting point
Yes,
here.
sir. Yeah.
He's saying that even the 15 billion that has been released is a drop in the ocean. Let me say this. With the forecasts we are making, come elections 2021, for any political party to have a fair shake in the electoral arena, if the political party does not have a campaign war chest in excess of 1 trillion shillings, they will not be able to shake the NRM. Because the truth must be told, the NRM is going to spend upwards of 1 trillion. And therefore, for you to come out, even when we talk about financing political parties for the purpose of elections, it cannot be billions. A political party would need upwards of 1 trillion shillings to be able to have a fair shake. And therefore, I think the time is now for the ministry. They still have some time to go back and rethink, because you see, they owe us an explanation as taxpayers. This is our money. Why are you ignoring the other provision and only focusing on this one? And then go back and find more money to put into political parties participating.
Mr. Muguzi, could it be the reason why opposition political parties have been losing, at least, against President Museveni, because of the issue of financing?
Absolutely. Let me tell you this, that in Uganda, experience has shown that the election is lost or won before it even starts.
I see.
And largely on the strength of how big is the size of your campaign war chest. So that is true, because you see now, look, for you to be able to mobilize, okay, let's start from the point of just protecting your ballot. For you to be able to deploy polling agents on every polling station in the country, you need funds. For you to be able to reach out to every district in every constituency, you not only need, if you're a presidential candidate, you not only need to use vehicles, but sometimes you may have to hire a chopper so that you can appear in at least 3 districts a day. So you see, all of these things are quite expensive. And therefore, the reason they've been losing, in addition to the not so favorable political environment that kind of shrinks the space that prevents them from mobilizing and selling their ideology, I think also the lack of money
I see.
is a factor.
Alex, this money has been shared before. That's a fact. Why are we seeing a fight now? The viewer wants to know.
Because, you know, it's towards elections, and I guess because of the weaknesses in all our political parties, in terms, say for NRM, which has the benefit of access maybe to public coffers, I think it's towards elections, and then, of course, you know, all the political parties are looking for the sources of how to finance their campaigns for their candidates. You have seen how the the opposition parties have struggled. NUP, for example, I think struggled a lot in terms of, it's only FDC that paid for the nomination fees for all their candidates. The other parties, even including NRM, people had to pay for themselves, and we have seen how they have really struggled across the country. So there's a fight for this money, little as it may be, because we are towards elections and everybody needs money to be able to campaign.
All right, let me also bring in Mr. Muguzi. Mr. Muguzi, the Alliance for Campaign Finance Monitoring, and the organization you're running, did advise political parties to stop depending on funding from government, but instead find alternative sources of funding for their election activities. How feasible is this, given that this is a volatile political atmosphere or environment?
It's quite difficult, but you see, we have always advised the political parties that you see when it comes to the political arena, it's always a fight. We have always made reference to the grandfathers of ours who fought for independence, that they faced a far much harsher enemy in the colonial machine than they're facing now. And therefore, so that that resistance shall always be there. The ground shall never be level, but they have to fight, because you see, many of them seem to be dependent on government funding. For the previous 2 quarters, government had not released this money, and you would see many of them struggling. The political parties, the big ones, struggling. So it's important for them to come out of liberate themselves from that thinking, and explore ways. The thing is, how do political parties in other countries raise funds? Political parties must be able to first of all to charge membership fees. They should sell regalia. They should sell, you know, they should identify like-minded organizations that can fund them. They should find organizations that are not interested in undermining the sovereignty of Uganda to finance them. They should, you know, quite a number of people. But hey, I think the one thing that is stopping them that we need maybe to address is the environment, because the thinking is that if you are a private company and you are bankrolling this party in opposition, chances are that government will move in and shrink your space as a business person. But the thing is, to sustain themselves and be able to have a shout in the electoral arena, I think it's important that they get to raise their own resources. And the law allows them to
not to depend on government and their money, which might take
the
long.
Political Parties and Organizations Act permits them to do this.
All right. Alex, as we wind up,
yes,
the money has been shared. But according to the law, the money is supposed to be shared in a uniform way. It wasn't done. It was instead shared according to numerical strength, NRM taking the biggest share. So if this is an illegality, what can these opposition political parties do moving forward? Can they sue?
I think they can go to court, but maybe by the time the court resolves the matter, it is too late. But they can, you know, with democracy, you have to keep fighting. You don't say that now this has passed, I call my tail and move on, but you need to keep fighting. Maybe in the next cycle of elections, in the next 5 years, maybe we shall get there. But they can go to court. But as he said, they need to look at alternative ways of raising funds. I know that in the structure of our economy makes it very difficult, for example, for all the political parties. You saw when the NRM was bringing 5 million signatures to nominate President Museveni, NUP was bringing 7 million. If you asked all those, they are supposed their members, to contribute 10,000 shillings, maybe 5,000 shillings to the party's campaigns, what impact would that make? But because the structure of our economy makes it very difficult for political parties to raise money in that kind of...
Insightful conversation with Mr. Alex Atuhaire and Mr. Henry Muguzi. Thank you for having made the time to speak to us.
Thank you for having us.